Do you want to start building skills in ChatGPT? In this video, I will show you how you can start building customized skills that can help you to automate specific workflows in ChatGPT. And as an example, I will show you how to build a business model canvas transformer that can help you in changing an initial startup idea into a fully fledged business model canvas presentation with one single prompt. So let's get started. Yes, so you might already have heard about that you can create skills in Clot, where it's actually very easy nowadays to build skills. And I have some other videos about that. So in these other videos, I've showed how you can build a skill to read numbers from a PDF and immediately transform it into an Excel, or to make your own kind of brand styler for PowerPoint presentations. And in Clot, it's very easy to do that nowadays, but of course, not everybody has a Clot subscription. So in this video, I actually want to show you how you can do something similar in ChatGPT. It requires a bit more steps than in Clot, but at least in that way, you can avoid that you have to take another subscription and that you can fully rely on your ChatGPT. So let me show you how you can do this in ChatGPT. Yes, so here I'm in my ChatGPT, and as an example, I will use this particular workflow. Namely, in my education, I often work with students to develop business model ideas, and an important aspect is to develop a business model canvas. And here I have actually designed a workflow that will help students to transform their initial business model idea into a full-fledged presentation of their business model canvas. So let me briefly show you how that workflow looks like. Yes, so we start with a prompt where I simply ask to give a full description of a business model canvas based on an initial idea. So here I simply copy-pasted an initial startup idea. This was an idea, Try It Spark, a pre-conference platform. I actually have a separate channel where I explain how I developed this idea step by step. But now we can just copy paste my initial business model idea, and then actually ChatGPT will create for me a business model canvas description. Yes, so here we can see briefly the full description. So it actually describes all the components of a business model canvas: value proposition, distribution channel, customer relationships, cost structures, and so on and so on. So with this first quite straightforward prompt, we already get a good description of how the business model canvas can look like. So now, as a follow-up prompt, what did I do? I actually uploaded here kind of the standard template for a business model canvas visualization. So the one from Strategizer. This is a well-known template, which is also publicly available on the internet. And then I asked now to create a PowerPoint presentation for the business model canvas that ChatGPT just created, where I emphasize that it should give an overview slide, and then for every component of the business model canvas, it should create an additional slide. And then again, we can see what the result here is. Yeah, so after some thinking, it has now indeed created for me the presentation as I wanted. So let's take a look how that looks like. Yes, so you see that indeed ChatGPT was able to use the Strategizer template here to create a kind of first draft of the business model canvas, and indeed a description for every component. Now this, of course, does not look very fancy, but actually at the end of the video, I will show you a brief trick how you can make it much more fancy by exporting this to NotebookLM. But at least in terms of content, we have here a very good description of our business model canvas. So in that way, it accomplished my workflow. I started from an idea, and now I already have, with kind of 2 prompts, I have a nice kind of business model canvas. But let me now show you how you can actually transform that into a skill. Yes, so what I now want to do is imagine that you on a regular basis have to do this kind of particular workflow, that you have to transform startup ideas into business model canvas presentations. Then of course you don't want to every time again execute all these steps. And this is where we can start building a skill. And a skill you have to see as that you will document how you can go from the initial input to the final output. Yeah, you have to see it as a kind of, if you would have an intern and you want to extensively describe to an intern what he or she needs to do to accomplish a certain workflow, you might write quite an extensive document to explain step by step what the intern needs to do. And in the end, that's what a skill is about. So a skill is a kind of document, often with some additional documents, that will describe to the ChatGPT in this case, what it needs to do to execute the workflow. So let me now briefly explain how you can create such a skill. Yes, and to create a skill in ChatGPT, we briefly need to go to a particular website, namely from agentskills.io. This is kind of a GitHub page where there is an extensive specification of how skills can be built. And this is very technical, so we don't have to bother too much about it. Of course, if you're interested, you can read it. But so this is kind of an instruction that we can use to build skills. And what we simply need to do is now to press here on copy page, and then we will use these instructions to build a skill into our ChatGPT. Yeah, so now I'm back into my ChatGPT prompt. And so now to build a skill based on what I've done before, I can simply do here a prompt saying, turn the above conversation into a skill that allows to transform the startup idea provided by the user into a business model canvas power presentation. Use the input below as guideline to build the skill. And so here I now copy pasted this information from this website. Yeah? So I just copied the page and pasted it in here. And then I can enable this prompt. And now actually ChatGPT will start for me to create this skill. So now we can go down. So you see, I give it quite some information. Here you can see it thought for quite some time, 2 minutes and 30 seconds, but then it indeed built a skill. And this is actually the structure of the skill that it built for me. And you can see here it built what is called a skill.markdown file. And this will be the file where it gives an extensive description of how this skill should work. Yeah? So based on the conversation that I had in my ChatGPT and based on the specification that I gave, it now has built a skill document. This is this extensive description on how to execute this workflow. And on top of that, it has kind of created some additional documents that this skill will need to really execute the skill. So for instance, of course, we have again here the business model canvas template that I uploaded. So this will be a kind of file that it has to use. And here it is some additional scripts and references. And this is also in the end here, this skill will also code the PowerPoint presentation. So this is the information that it needs. And so in the end, what you need to use the skill in other prompts, you need to download all these files. And in that way, I now simply wrote a follow-up prompt. So let me show you that. Yeah, so here I then simply said, would like to download the relevant files. And then it created for me a zip folder with all the files that I need for this skill. So let me show you that. Yeah, so as you can see here, it now created for me a zip file with all the necessary files. So now I can just click here on download, and then I can download all the files. Yeah, so now I can see this folder with all the files, which I can click open. And so here you have this SKILL.md file. So let me briefly show you how that actually looks like. Yeah, so a skill is simply a kind of text document that describes how the skill should work. So you see, you will get a name, a description, and then it will describe what does this skill do? What kind of inputs does it need? What kind of output will it create? And what is the workflow that it needs to execute? Yeah, so as mentioned before, this is simply a document that will describe in detail what needs to happen. And this will give ChatGPT the necessary instructions to execute your skill. And here you see it can reference to other documents that it might need to make this happen. So that's how actually a skill works. And now we can actually use this document into a ChatGPT project when we want to execute the skill. So let me show you that. Yeah, so when I now want to actually use the skill in ChatGPT, what can I do? I can here now create a new project. And then I can give this project a name. So now we can call it Business Model Canvas to Presentation. And we can create this project. And now in this project, we simply need to add the files that are related to my skill. Now I already done that, so let me show you how that looks like. Yeah, so here I'm in the project that I already created, and now you can see I uploaded here 6 different files, and these were actually all the files that were in my folder that I downloaded. So let me go here to project settings. Yeah, so here I keep the instructions very simply. I just say use the project files to create a business model canvas presentation, so that I make sure that it every time goes into the files when I write a prompt in this particular project. And so now when we have created our project, I can start using prompts in this project, enabling these skills. So let me briefly show you how that works. Yeah, so now I'm in my project, and now again, I can write, create a business model canvas presentation for the following startup idea. And again, then I copy paste my startup idea here. And then actually it will start working, reading all the documents. And in this case, it worked for like 5 5 minutes, and then immediately you get as output the PowerPoint presentation. And so in that way, I don't have to write all these follow-up prompts. Now that I have created the skill and added it to a project, I can now, every time when I need to do this workflow, go to the project, write one single, very straightforward skill, and immediately I will get the output that I want. So this is how we can start creating skills in ChatGPT. Now, what I promised you is to also show you how you can make now this presentation much more fancy. Yeah, so I showed you before that the PowerPoint was not yet great. So let me now briefly, as a final step, show you how we can kind of pimp this presentation to a very nice kind of presentation that we can use if we really want to present this business model canvas. Yeah, so now I'm in NotebookLM, and NotebookLM is quite famous, that you can here upload documents and chat with them. And so what I did here was I actually transformed the PowerPoint into a PDF, because NotebookLM cannot read PowerPoint, so you first have to transform it into PDF. But then I just uploaded that presentation here as a PDF. And now we can actually ask NotebookLM to kind of pimp the presentation. Let me show you what I did for that. So I went then to Studio, and here we have a lot of options. And one of the most recent options is that you can create a slide deck. And I already did that now. Let me briefly show you the prompt that I used to create a slide deck. Yeah, so if you press here on Edit, you can kind of give a prompt to explain what you want in terms of the slide deck. So then you can just here, if I go down now, add kind of a prompt. So let me show you the prompt that I have used in this case. Yeah, so the prompt I used here was transform the provided slide deck into a professional presentation that uses cinematic illustrations to illustrate the different components. Make sure to keep the same structure. Yeah, so that's the prompt that I used to create a slide deck, and let me now show you the outputs. Yeah, so this is now the slide deck that NotebookLM has created for me. I can immediately already see that now in terms of visualizations, it looks much better. So let me show you a bit what it has created for me. Yeah, you can see now that for every single component, NotebookLM has created a very visual representation of the component based on the input that I have created. So if you want to have a very visual, appealing presentation, I think then going into NotebookLM and create this kind of slide deck will really help you in that respect. The disadvantage at the moment is a bit that then it's quite difficult to make changes to it. So that's kind of a limitation at the moment. But given that you then have created first presentation yourself, you can actually then quite reduce the risk that it creates stuff that you don't want. So this is kind of a final trick you can use to make very visually appealing presentations. Okay, I hope that this video can help you to start building your own skills in OpenAI so that you don't have to take another subscription. It's a bit more technical, but I hope that by step showing what you need to do, I can help you. Okay, if you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for your attention. Bye.